Caroline Marvin is a psychologist and psychotherapist with well over 40 years of experience. Her specialty is in both teaching and practicing couple and family therapy. Since 1977, she has maintained a private psychotherapy practice. Additionally, for most of her career, she was a director and senior faculty member of the Family Institute of Cambridge, a postgraduate training center for psychotherapists in the Boston area. In that role, she taught intensive year-long training programs and had the honor of teaching with well over 500 practicing mental health professionals. Caroline has served on the faculty of the Massachusetts School of Professional Psychology, where she developed and taught the advanced family therapy course for psychologists in training. Throughout her career, she has had a special interest in treating families and couples whose lives lie outside of traditional cultural norms. From that sensibility comes the motto of her private practice, recognizing that families are diverse and that all families matter, as well as the title she chose for this morning's class, No Such Thing as Normal. So please join me in welcoming from the class of 1967, Dr. Caroline Marvin.
I wish everyone had the chance to do like a life review to present to everyone, because it's really been amazing to be thinking about coming to Monmouth and trying to say what I do and what that has to do with having started here and all of that. So I want to say about the title, and then I want to tell you 3 exchanges I had with a couple of people, and then we're going to work from this videotape. When I was asked for a title, No Such Thing as Normal just popped out of my mouth, and I thought I'd just work with it to see what I thought it meant. And this morning I was thinking about my mother's motto, which was, what will people think? So, in family therapy, well, let me go to my 3 quotes. So I have a colleague at home, Corky Becker, who will be in and out of the screen. And I told her I was doing this, and I said, what would you talk about if you were going to do this? Because our situations are comparable. And she said, well, I think I'd say that when I went into it, I thought it was a job, a way of working. But then it became a worldview, and after that it became a spiritual practice. And that really is how it feels to me. I think I went from being terrified when I walked into the room with more than a few people to just being so eager and so excited to see what was going to happen next, and not having to think about myself and whether I knew what to do. So that's with Corky. The next one was with Mary Ellen here, who in a conversation last night, we were talking about things that had happened to us, and she said, she said like a good Presbyterian, don't you just think that these things that happen to us, that they're meant to be there because these may not be your exact words, they're aligned with our purpose somehow, something we're supposed to do. And I think that's true, that there's, I think that there's been a whole unfolding of life events that have been painful, but have always supported me and unfolded into something I felt easier doing in my work. And the third with Jenny Jacobson, where are you?
Right here.
And yes, so we were walking out to get luggage yesterday, and she said, she just arrived, and she said, the thing I remember about you is that you study Jean Piaget.
That's right.
So those are my little entry things. So I think the start I got came very much out of Monmouth. There were some things here that very much excited me, and I'll just mention 3, but one was Dr. Bowen in biology, another was Dr. Allison in biology, and the third was Tom Irwin in psychology. And there was a way that the psychology department taught from a general systems theory base, so that you, like, if you had to think about photosynthesis, or if you had to think about biological processes in the body, anything, it was so, the way they taught was so expertly grounded in a really exquisite understanding of general systems theory. Actually, with Sam Thompson, I wrote a paper where it was all the biological roots of this particular philosopher. So wait a minute, I just lost my train of thought. What was the last thing I said? Oh, yeah. So all of the biological, thank you, all the biological, this is being 71. All of the biological roots were taught very well. And then, when I didn't seem to be making it in physics and chemistry and switched out of pre-med, I fell into psychology, and it had no faculty because Tom Irwin was in Switzerland studying with Jean Piaget. So, and when he came back, he was really, he was such an invested mentor. And there was a paper that was going to be my final paper, and he would sit with me on a Saturday morning in his office, and with journals that were not translated from French, and translate them into English while I sat and took notes, because they were articles that I needed something from. So, I thought what we do is do an immersion experience in family therapy. And I could say I'm a family therapist, but more importantly, I'm a teacher of family therapy. That's really where my edge is in being able to teach it well. And so this is a class, and it's a class that's been running for about 4 years. It has started over each September for about 4 years. And what we do is that a very experienced couples therapist comes and explains how they work, and then interviews a couple, and then takes questions from the students. And it's really, it's such a multi-layered learning. And so this was about the third session of the first year, and it was my turn to present. And so this is me talking about couples therapy, and first of all, how I think about it, and the progression of ideas that led me to where I am. And second, you'll see some pieces of this interview. There's so much more material, but I think you'll see kind of the translation of how I think about couples therapy into how I behave with the couple. And the couple is a role-played couple, but we do that so much that it, as a role player myself, once I'm in the role, I'm doing what the role instructs me to do, and they aren't easy. And then then there's the final part where the students ask me some questions. And so we stop at 9 o'clock, so we'll just go as far as we can. And I may stop and start, I will stop and start to amplify things. And if you really, really have an urgent question, then you can put your hand up or something. All right, so I've just been asked to say how I think about how I work, and there's even something here about college. Come on.
Part of it. Something discussed was a particular intervention I have in a first interview that winds up usually creating a template for the whole therapy.
Can we get
And,
Turn the volume up.
so hopefully I'll be able to both show how that goes and
Yeah, it's all the way up.
if you are somebody who writes things down and you just wrote down my words and you have it, it's just a good question. So then as I was thinking about how did I
What
get
is it?
to that particular way of bringing couples therapy,
Where did you do it? Okay. So I think if we just really listen up, and of course we're all 71 and older. And so most of us probably won't be able to hear it very well, and so I can fill in. I really wish we could turn the sound up. But I've said that I'm going to teach a particular intervention that I use with couples where it's based on the notion of the ritual impasse fight, that every couple has a fight. You may wind up getting this from me instead of from the videotape. We'll see. Every couple winds up having, some couples don't get into difficulty. Couples that get into difficulty, there's a way that their stories, their lifetimes of experience intersect, that the more one person does something, the more it leads to the other person doing something, and that what this person's doing is only going to exaggerate this person's feelings and behavior, and what this person's feelings and behavior is only going to exaggerate this person's feelings and behavior. And we call that the ritual impasse fight, or sometimes we call it the vulnerability cycle. And I have a thing I do where I get family history. This is the first interview. I get family history by asking the wife to tell me the husband's story and asking the husband to tell me the wife's story, so that I don't have to get all the history. I only have to get the piece that's the rub. So, because he's going to tell me the part about her family history that has significance for him and vice versa. So I'm explaining that that's what we're going to do. You want to start it?
Could you put the microphone near the speaker?
Maybe. Where's the speaker? It's in the ceiling.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so started.
You know, over like weeks, I've been remembering all those fragments of things that kind of like the violence bonds the magnet. Little pieces that
The
have
speaker and the computer.
shaped how I think about the work I do. And,
No.
you know, I think there's what we do and then there's what we think we do. So this is what I think I do, this is the intellectual part. And as I started to kind of make a list of those things, then I thought, oh, wouldn't it be interesting if every therapist made a timeline of their life from when they started practicing until they retired, and noticed when they learned something new and how focused it. Because in a way, systemic therapy is so much about this balance. You do something and complete reorganization in response to what you've done. And so that is also true of when I've encountered different ideas and approaches. So this is going to be an attempt to say the filings that are on the magnet. And so I started to make a list. I thought, let's see, when should I start it? And then I thought, oh, if I made it 50 years, I could start in 1965 when I was midway through college and end here tonight. So when I came out of college, I thought of myself as a potential scholar of the work of Jean Piaget, and probably bound to be a college professor in some education program somewhere. And I had learned, and the thing I think that really captured me in that work was in my high school biology class, I loved everything I learned about equilibrium and health systems self-regulate, and how ecology works and how species evolve, and everything that was that expression of general species theory. So then when I learned about Jean Piaget, he started talking and it's just like the evolution of species, and I thought, bingo, this is really exciting.
Better?
So I got, so from high school biology, I already had this brain, but then, the thing that really captured me was how, and this is the piece that's still in my family therapy, was, so you're a child and you have pre-operational thought, or you're a very young child and you have pre-operational thought, or you're a slightly older child and you have pre-operational thought, and you think the sun follows you, or the moon follows you down the street, and you
This is
think
Piaget.
that if something goes wrong in your parents' marriage, you caused it. Like in my own particular case, it was by picking my nose, I'm pretty sure. That's concrete operational thought. And then you get to be in high school and then you have logical operational thought and you start to be able to abstract and all that. And just by the by, I would say that I often notice my clients shift in session from logical operations to concrete operations or even pre-operational thought. And I say, what happened when you were 10? What happened when you were 7? What happened when you were 4? Because the language itself and the inflexibility and the things people don't know how to incorporate relate to how they think when they're having them. So then shifting down, I just want to put this piece from an instrument that comes in here, that he said in the introduction to one of his early books, he said
Salvador
that
Minuchin is
family
a
therapy was
family
like
therapy
learning carpentry.
historical
That,
figure.
At first, you're conscious of all the small pieces. Like, you know that you're sanding, there's a certain way to do that, or you're planing, or you're making a particular kind of joining, and you stop and you think about it and you try to do it correctly. But eventually it becomes seamless, and that is how you go from being a student of to being a craftsperson. And
Could you understand what I just said in that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was saying that one of the historical family therapy figures says that it's like learning woodworking, that first you learn to plane, and then you learn how to do a certain kind of a joint, and so on, and there's attention to the technique, and then eventually it all becomes unconscious, and you're just doing the woodworking. And that's what I was saying about him. So this is just me trying to tell the students the kinds of thinking that go into what I do. So we just have a few more minutes.
and that he thought therapy was like that. So I'm going to teach you these sub-skills, but eventually it'll be a seamless piece. And I think it's really true that in time, we don't see what we do because it's so instinctive. So when I came to Family Institute, it was 1975, and it was a 2-year program here. And my primary faculty person was Carter Umbarger, secondarily David Canner, and Terry Dim as well. But the pieces that came together and my thinking about tonight was that Carter, again, was entering right through general systems theory. And he had this metaphor, which was that if you would be looking for a kaleidoscope, and there's a pattern in there.
Kaleidoscope.
And very still. And then if you could turn it by like little micro piece that turns, that nothing would happen at first. And then suddenly the whole thing would shift. And that's the metaphor I have inside me for what's possible when you're working with a system. That
This is the primary place that family therapy comes up against psychodynamic therapy, who were enemies for a long time, no more, but that in psychodynamic theory, things take a long time to develop and a long time to resolve. And in family therapy theory, it's like, if I can get the pattern, if I can see the point, if I can make my intervention right there, the whole thing will flip. And either next time they'll come in upside down and backwards, like the dad will look like the mom, and people have different roles. But it will change it, and then eventually it will change it into something that will be adaptive for its ecosystem. So, okay.
that, like, traditional psychiatric models are big, long, chronological time, but family systems models are rapid, and suddenly something can be so different. So, and my experience bears that out. Then Carter also, if you read his book, I'm sure this all comes down to Richard, but what I learned it from him, that so you see the family and here's what they're doing, and suddenly you see something that's different, and it might even be different in a good direction. And if you get behind it, then if you push just a little further, the whole thing may change. And also deviation countering loops, which is that you notice how someone in the family perhaps operates to keep it the same. So, like my mom, who was completely thwarting everything I tried to do, and those were deviation countering feedback loops. And so I know that I have to notice those and try to,
So here you have the family, it's in homeostasis, it always looks the same. They come in every week, they present the same. And but you look for something that's a little different, we call it deviation. Then you use your own, whatever you got, to either support the deviation amplifying thing that already came up from the family, or to support, or to try to interfere with the deviation countering feedback loops. This is just the language of family therapy, but it does show the minutia of what you're watching for. And later when we get to this interview, you'll see my head hardly comes up from my pad because I am so intently seeking the kind of information I need to make the kinds of interventions that will make a difference. And so, okay.
to interfere with them, so that there's,
So I was seeing a family that immigrated from India, and both of their kids, and they've divorced, and the daughter was really doing well and getting ready to leave high school and blah, 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 and the mother suddenly became very angry at things the child had either done in the past or had done today, except she would say, not really, I didn't really do that. And it was seeming to come from nowhere. So the deviation was, she had shifted from kind of dull and numb to actively critical of this child. And now the child's living out of the house and a little suicidal and might go to boarding school. Anyway, but the deviation was, what I perceived was the mother shifting into this negative frame, which I think probably was being generated by the upcoming separation, because she's going to graduate from high school. But so I just went to work to try to find ways she would hear me about what an amazing and lovely child she's reared. And then I made an alliance with her personal therapist and said, and I sent her a text and I said, sometimes when the two therapists talk to each other, the client is able to begin to trust that this absolutely wonderful adult person is on its way, just embedding suggestions, that kind of thing. Yeah.
there's a chance for the system can do with clients therapy. So David Cantor taught my class.
Okay, I think we'll stop here and I'll go to tape 02. Yeah. So there's a bunch more. I just talk about different things I've learned that really matter to me or that I use. One thing, I'm so much a teacher that when I'm doing family therapy, I'm teaching, I'm saying, well, here's why I'm doing this. Here's where it comes from. And, so this one of these stories is about a family therapist at the Ackerman Institute in New York City named Phoebe Kosky. She wrote an article that was never published. It's kind of a theme. And it was hand to hand. And she says, in it talking about her students, she says, people always ask me, how do two people whose issues are so completely, how did, maybe I can fix it, I think I know what it is. How do two people whose issues so completely align, how in the world do they find each other? Because it's so, the fit is so exquisite and maybe terrible. And she says, oh, I always give the same answer. I say, like bats in the dark of night, they fly directly to their targets. Which is, it's just the whole mate finding and how we do sometimes find the person that's going to provoke the growth.
Right, and he's actually here, so.
Okay, are we in two? No, okay.
If you were to describe who you think she complains about, is the part of you that can be distracted and that is still trying to focus on your own interests, no matter what other people might need, and that you don't mind fighting to be the popular parent. Okay. And you say, actually.
This is the beginning of the couple's interview, so we're going to get the picture in a minute.
There it is, right there.
Right, no, I'm not upset about that. So when we got married, tell me what your next person.
Yeah, so If you were to start out and answer the question, why are you guys here and how can I be helpful to you?
Because I'm miserable in this relationship and I wish I can do it anymore, but we have a long history, we have 3 kids. My parents were divorced, I did not want that for my kids, and every year I say, oh good, now it's been 15 more years than my parents were married.
Now you're in the sound.
So.
All right, we have all experts here. Okay. Yes, so there that is. Yay, there they are. So part of being a family therapist is dealing with technology. And this is like the 80,000th time I've gone to present to some kind of professional audience and had the equipment be faulty. I mean, this equipment is exquisite, actually. It's wonderful equipment. But something, though, always goes wrong. And in this kind of work, it's so much about transactions and seeing the little subtleties of what people do. Videotape is so useful. When we started, it was real surreal. Okay.
And so I'm trying really hard to make this work, but I
We have
can't.
these, you come to the end of your road.
I'm just exhausted. I have to do every single thing. So he's the fun parent. We had an agreement, it's true, that, he would take time off, after our 3rd child was born, and it seemed to make sense.
So he'll just stay on parent.
Yeah, when the youngest is born, when he was 5.
The agreement makes sense, and your job is really good, and salary
So
is
you
great.
said, you took care of his predominantly until the youngest was 5, and then he.
I worked part-time,
Okay. And then you went in to work full-time, and he came in more.
Right. And he was kind of home, which wasn't really the best thing because already our son was going to kindergarten, but okay, whatever, it was good, didn't have to worry about him home when they came home. But one of the things that I was so attracted to in the beginning was that Michael was smart, he was interesting, he had aspirations, he was going to write his book. He was just an interesting person.
What happened?
And I am writing the book, I mean, that's part of it,
Been writing
the
books
time,
since I
you
met
know,
you.
it connects to the biology, but it has a science fiction slant to it, and it,
Val, tell me what she thinks
okay.
is, she was drawn to you because you were smart and interesting and had these aspirations.
Yes.
And you have
And he was
feelings.
fun.
And
He was fun.
And now he
Planned
says,
things.
I can be distracted and focus on my own interests. So it sounds like you don't get much of that part of him.
I don't get anything. He's been home all day, he's not writing his book, he's written 1 chapter in the last 2 years. Everything, I have to take care of the kids. Our oldest daughter is 16, she has some eating issues, we're a little worried about her. They're all high-achieving kids, they have a million extracurricular activities.
There was this moment when I thought I heard you have the interviewing voice of what you fell in love with, the smart, interesting, and aspirational. And what, there was something new.
Can we go back to that?
Well,
The
I like,
pilot, the pilot of the complaint is huge.
well, I think that we just need to first restart.
So he thinks that he's complaining all the time.
You are.
But I want to hear about that, you fell in love with
The guy I
him.
fell in love with was not this guy. We were to be like a power couple and have kids and
So it's not like all feminists could marry and feel strong and pursue a strong partner never.
yes.
Okay.
And we were going to be able to work and raise our children and have our own interests and be partners for each other. Of course, that didn't happen.
And,
I forget you guys don't see this stuff every day.
Well, am I right? That you were kind of excited about?
Well, in the beginning, it did sound exciting because it was science fiction, but with the real science. And that was impressive to me, as I said, I've been an avid reader. Even though I don't read science fiction, but, you know, whatever.
Did you
I have-
appreciate a well-written manifest?
I'm somebody, yeah, who can write, and I was terrible at science, and so I appreciated science. Knowledge.
So if you had to say when the bottom fell out of the,
It was when our son was born,
first child?
no, the third child. Two daughters and a son. The youngest one's born.
So you got, in your view, you made it through the first two children.
Yeah, I
And you
mean-
still were in a reasonable relationship at the bottom
Well,
of
that-
that when he came home.
I think there was an issue about him having a son.
Oh, you do?
So you have now, so you have the theory of psychologizing of Michael. Another wonderful thing she can do. She's smart, she's good at it.
Well,
but
then you tell me
that's
what
the idea.
happened. What do you think happened? And do you agree with the date?
The date, well, it did happen when our son was born, yes. And I enjoyed it, I enjoyed it as well. One of the things that are unfair
So
is
why do you
Wait,
think
that's one
she
more.
would say that the bottom fell out when the third child was born? Why do you think she would say that, knowing
well, I think it changed in a way she didn't want it to. We made the plan for me to take this time, and it didn't work out. Well, she was pretty controlling about things, and she couldn't make it happen, and the way she wanted
What do you
to.
call his name?
her? Is it?
I got a
I don't know.
No, you're letting her call me.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I
See,
was probably tracking something else.
I'm gonna direct you now to.
Uh.
Smart way, because, well,
Oh, I gotta sit down, okay. What was the name, Rosie?
You said I was controlling?
Oh, okay, I guess, I mean, I did hear that go by, but,
You gonna let him call me
I
names?
was trying to think about whether you had an agreement about whether things went wrong at that point in the history. Because it sounds like a huge structural change in your whole family, that you went further out of the world of work, you came in and stopped teaching, and you felt very overburdened starting then?
Well, do you want to hear my theory?
Sure. You know,
the theory, okay.
okay, so we can have old theories, intermediate theories, new theories, but let's just keep them flexible. But what is your theory at the moment?
My theory is that when we had daughters, he didn't feel this need to be home with them, which was fine, you know, that's why we had a nanny. I was part-time for a while. And then once there was a son, he needed to be home. He needed to be perfect, have the perfect father-son relationship,
And what-
because he didn't have that with his own father.
Okay, so you have a theory that he turned into become somebody else when there was a boy child to raise differently than he was raised.
Yes. Well, to raise differently than the girl children.
And
That is the theory.
then, do you agree with the timing?
And that way, can I have one more
Oh,
piece? That in his determination to be the perfect father to this boy child, I was just thrown to the wayside, and our daughters too.
The women were like,
Yeah,
not important anymore.
no. Because it was all about boy toys and boy games and sports and this and that and the other thing. Well, the girls we're all into sports.
Did you tell him how hurt you were? Have you ever told him how hurt you were of what you lost?
Endlessly, he's complaining.
secretary part?
Well, I've certainly told him that I miss our closeness, our intimacy, sex. You know, we haven't had sex in how many years?
A number.
5.
So, I don't know that he discriminates, indicate your heartbreak and your yearning from shows student criticism.
Right, because he thinks colleges
Can't do it right.
said it many times.
So if you had to tell the stories from summer school, what would you say been going on since then? Is that also when the third floor was
Yeah, well, sometime after that, sometime after that, it seemed, yes. It was like, we made this joint decision and then that really wasn't working. You know, I'm so objective, you know, we like my daughters, I love my daughters, and this is a time to do almost some homeschooling, I could give them something that they weren't getting. in
So do you
school.
feel that when you came home, you were more present?
The dog is choking. This is the dog of one of the other teachers. It's choking. And later we talk about her relationship to the interview.
Usually when she eats something, come here.
The impression you have, like since you've been home and how you've been feeling, the quality of marriage. It's interesting that back in the very beginning, you said, yeah, well, there is something somebody could complain about, which is, these weren't your words, but you kind of said, I'm kind of self-centered and I do what I want to.
The piece that's missing of that is, I put a lot of energy into these kids and working with the kids, even the kids that they know. So I guess that's what my interest is. So it doesn't feel like I'm just doing what I want to do. It really feels like I have a bigger purpose than that. That's her opinion that is, you know, that I'm just self-centered.
So, but would you agree that, as you became more involved with giving to your own kids and other people's kids, that there's been a miss, like something, that there's energy that's not happening between you?
Yeah. So I mean, it's true. I mean, she, you know, very invested in work. She was made partner, so she's doing extremely well. And I admire that. It's not that I don't admire that, but there's not a lot of time left over to involve her. I mean,
So you have the fear that she's too busy for you,
yeah.
and she has the fear that you're not interested in your life with her.
Right, and I'm definitely not enough. I mean, there's always something wrong with me.
Well, wait, let's try to hear inside the complaint is, I've lost something that was important to me.
Oh. Yeah. Because we did have a relationship, it's true, it's true. I mean, I'm glad to hear that, you know. I heard about being smart, she's smart too, and creative, and there's a creativity and there's a
And
smartness.
did you have that vision of the powerful couple?
I think that was her feminist thing. I didn't think of power couple, but we were, I would say we were a fun, interesting couple. Fun, we were, you know, interesting to be with. You want to come to dinner, not now, but.
We had 4 years before the kids.
The crash.
Well, and then 2 years before.
Yeah.
the marriage, so 6.
Yeah.
How long is this chapter that has been problematic?
Well, our son is 12.
So, but it's,
Well, he was 5, so like 7 years.
So, I'm starting to think,
Yeah.
would there be a way to help you re-access what you had or something better than what you had? People get caught in these ways of being together and these resentments that don't seem to get addressed and things like that, and it can get feeling awful.
Yeah.
But if they've had a time that felt like what they wished for, then often we can find, probably not a route to that, because that was a different age and stage,
Yeah.
but a route to something that feels as good as appropriate for now. And then there are some couples who are no longer interested in that. And I don't know if you, but you came to couples therapy, so.
Yeah,
Well, we have 3 kids, and it's been 20 years.
which is an investment.
But did you come to you?
Well, I came to figure out what we should do, because the fact is, I'm just tired. I know it takes 2, and I'm not sure I have that energy to,
So something has to be different, because if you are feeling that burden, you aren't going to have any different way to go back home. Isn't that, I mean, that's, I kind of have this energy coming in the door of your house, and it's like, ugh, because it's a mess, and it's an alcohol into it, and so you walk in and feel really resentful. And you've been playing, and your energy.
Teaching and
Teaching and all.
it's not like it's both, it's not like it's this mess. It's creativity going on, it's not like there's not a meal, but that's part of.
well, there's not a meal.
Biological,
And the
put
kids
things
haven't
together.
done their homework, and the girls are 16 and 14 now, so they're not even really part of it.
And I bet he's wishing, like, when you're wishing that he was doing something that you would come in and feel more received, he's wishing you would come in and admire his verbal
Yes,
mess.
I do, yes. No doubt.
And if you weren't so burdened, if you weren't so burdened, you might, because I know you had a twinkle in your eye about that part of him long ago. If you weren't really so burdened, maybe you would enjoy him more. And if she wasn't complaining, which is what you hear her expressions of burden as critique you,
Yeah,
they probably are framed that way,
yeah,
then
and
you
it's
might be happy to see her,
a,
and not only be paying attention to the children.
right, and I tend to, I just ignore it because I don't want to hear it, so I stop paying attention. I do stop paying attention because I don't hear it anymore. I'm hearing it now, and,
Yeah, well, so-
but I don't want to,
We got to sharpen your ears.
Yeah, it feels like, like there's something coming and torpedoing the boat.
But I'm not sure you can,
See?
Well, we don't know. You're not sure you can what? Give up what?
I'm not sure that I can recapture what there was.
Because there's too much water in the dam, because you've got a chip on your shoulder, because you don't think he'll change, because.
Well, I'm angry and I'm tired.
So I don't know if that means either,
Okay,
but.
I think we're on pause. So, that was as much of the interview as I thought we'd look at. I'm, so interesting to look at it in the privacy of my little bedroom. And, then get to hear your responses to it, because, I got a lot of subtleties just hearing where the tittering came from. So is there anything that you want to ask or say or remark about? If we can listen to the students ask and say and remark about, because that's what happens after the interview. And we go on and do quite a bit more here, and it's really about building a contract for therapy and getting the agreement that they want to do it and that they're willing to set aside the resentments. And so, yeah,
They do a really good job. You said they are actors.
no,
They're not
they're family therapists or they're
They were
young beginning family therapists.
These two.
These-
But they were role
Where
players.
they give them down.
They are, they were told, let's see, I didn't enroll them, but I think they were told that they were a couple with 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. And that it was not a family therapy issue, it was a couples issue. And that was the referral information I had, that was it. And they made it up from
That's
there.
my question.
Yeah.
Yeah, was it made up or
Whether
real?
they had a script or not.
No script.
Making this up.
No, this is them having fun taking this job on and trying to thwart the therapist. But it's not that different, you know, it's a little more amusing, but it's pretty much what I can tell you, sitting there, it feels exactly the same as being in the office and working with people. Yeah,
After years of premarital counseling.
Yeah.
Minister, and based on that and my own marriage, I came up with a thought that I wonder what you would think of.
yeah,
That marriage is turning the love that brought us together into a love that will keep us together.
that's nice.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and especially for this interview, because I think what I got onto right away was that there was a lot of resentment in the present, but there was a spark, and I began to embed the suggestion that I could see it in the room, and then I started to point out where one of them was actually trying something more positive, but the other wasn't hearing it. And, you know, that I was just trying to engineer more and more openings into the better part. I mean, the ideal interview is they go home kind of giggling. But no, I think that's a nice reframe. Yeah.
Their script sort of was a lot about the complaints when the roles reversed of traditional roles.
Yes, I think
How
that's-
often have you found that to be an issue?
Oh. You know, it doesn't stand out for me as, the people that I see are in Cambridge, Massachusetts, living around Harvard and teaching there, or wishing they were teaching there, or dropped out of Harvard, or, you know, I mean, at least this role play couple fits that. I mean, I have a lot of other couples from other classes and so on, but maybe we're over the cusp of that particular, because we kept referring to feminism as a piece of this, but there was a sense of it as an archaeological feature of marriage. So, but of course it would be a stress. I could absolutely see that as a trajectory for therapy. Yeah.
Very interesting. So if you had to define what are the more common stressors today for young families?
Yeah.
This is a unique family up in Cambridge,
Oh, yeah.
but working class families trying to make it, recent immigrants. What are the major stressors for the children and their parents that lead to problems?
Well, it's any misfit between what's happening in the inner system of the family and the surround. So there's an adaptive problem. But like the family I was just talking about earlier, where they immigrated from India, very much there is evidently, based on this and checking with a couple other people who are seeing families from that culture, the discipline is quite harsh. And both the father and mother, the father has been more verbal about it, have had pretty abusive upbringings. And so now translating that into Acton, Massachusetts, where they live now, in a nice school and so on. I did see a lot of variety of families. Now I'm older and I practice in my living room, so I get a little bit different clientele, but cultural misfit, well, addiction, I don't know, we could go on, the list is endless, but this is where we have some overlap too, because you're working cross-culturally a lot. Yeah. Yes.
Why do you think that the divorce rate in this country is at 50% or a little bit greater? What is the trend here? Why is that, do you think, generally speaking?
There's a piece of research, now I don't know if this is the answer to your question, but because I enter from a different place, not exactly from that question, in terms of how I think. I'm just looking at process all the time. But John Gottman did a study where they observed couples and they counted the number of affirmative interactions and the number of either absence of response or faintly devaluing or discrediting remarks. So in conversation going on all day, it's like, did you get the jam? I didn't get the jam. You know, or how'd you sleep? And I slept pretty well, I didn't sleep. You know, I mean, and you can just code them. And they found, and the people who were doing the coding could not tell which were the successful couples and which were the unsuccessful couples, because they looked about the same. But when you did the count, the prediction of those disconfirming interactions and the absence of the affirming interactions 100% predicts divorce. And so it may be carelessness or lack of a bigger vision of what marriage and commitment is that would, it's like what the gentleman behind you said, you know, about, it takes intention, and it takes, I mean, people come to me when they've jammed up and gotten stuck, but it takes intention and hard work, and making the choice, like, oh, I'm grumpy, but she asked me if I wanted eggs, and I have a choice. I can say, you know, I hate the way you cook eggs, or I can say, you know, I'm going to have cereal, I'll get it myself. You know? And so there is something about marriage as less valued and people as less holding it less sacredly and with less care. And you know, it's like, what's my husband? I could just think it's just my husband. You know, like how she talks. You know, 9:53. I'll just tell you that if we, I think we won't go on to the students' questions. That's a fun part too, but you know, can't do everything. But we talk about what caused the dog to choke, and they were able to parse out, you know, what was going on in the interview. They asked a lot of questions about my persistence, just that I was like a dog with a bone. They said, you know, just like, and this woman, I mean, these are people that have studied with us for a while, we know them in other contexts. So Randy, she is just like that. She's just disgruntled and pissy, and that's just how she is. And I don't know why this is relevant, but she's the daughter of a famous author, depending on what literature you know. Her mother wrote the book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Oh my God.
So that's that author's daughter. And we've also had the daughter of the woman who wrote August, by Judith Rossner. This is also a pretty intense book. So, but it's just interesting, these generational issues with the students. Those are fun and interesting too. And Michael, I don't know. Yeah.
What's your batting average? What's your success rate? Well, how many you go through that you feel, hey, I really helped? How many right away you go, this is hopeless? And how many times do you go home at night going, hey, I really did a good job? I did something. How many go home with, why am I wasting my time here?
I don't look at staying together as a criterion of success. So if it's a good process and it is leading toward the fullest expression of each life, but we're talking couples now, but we could be talking family and saying all the lives, then it's good. So, you know, there are situations where people's lives are being lost to them by staying in a dynamic that is so wounding and punishing to them. And sometimes, if they understand it, we go up the family tree and, you know, start to get, oh, well, of course, it's like my mother, my father, blah, 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 and then required of me here that I thought I had to do with my family. Maybe I don't have to do it, and I think I'm gonna leave. And then the other one says, you're gonna leave? And then they say, oh, well, if you left, let's see, we sell a house, and then I could go down and get a place at the beach. So there's an uncoupling that or maybe just more space in the relationship, or less over-involvement in how it has to be so perfect every second. But the gist of it for me is riding the surf of what's happening in the moment, and always trying to pick up what's happening, like a really sophisticated computer game. Always trying to pick up in the moment what's happening so that I can tailor my response to bring it closer to something that's going to give the most wholeness to the whole system. So, yeah.
You mentioned Dr. Milton Bowman as being one of your interests in your teacher.
Here.
Dr. Bowman, yeah.
Yes, biology.
Well, my question is,
Yeah.
when you spoke about the systems of biology in your work, homeostasis, you
Yeah,
mentioned.
that's right.
So that seemed to have an influence on you from the get-go.
It did, and I mean, here, they were showing us what they always do. And my job was to make something different happen than what they always do. And what they always do kept coming back in, and especially through her. And nothing the students say is like, oh, how could you bear it with her? And she's standing there. This thing I remember, and I think it might have been Dr. Allison, but, and I wrote about it in my bio for Class of 67, where he taught photosynthesis by having a bunch of men, guys, boys, stand in front of the class and pass off chalk erasers. And you could really see it, how he must have had 15 men up there playing this out. May have been some of you. And it was just wonderful teaching. Yes.
I think this is along the same line of Dave Spears and I were talking earlier this morning, and he brought up a course that he took decades ago in transactional analysis.
Huh.
And I assume you remember that.
I remember that book.
Child, parent, adult thing.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Is that discounted? Is it still used, or has it been helpful to you?
There's a way that family therapy process is always changing. The field itself is changing. I used to have tantrums because I was trying to teach young students, and then they'd say, "Oh no, that's not the thing anymore. Now we do this," And I'd say, "Forget that. I'm trying to teach students. I gotta have something stable here, But things do pass away, and part of that list that I had on the chalkboard was really all the different iterations of family therapy that I've been through, and. TA is a good system, and people that know it and are fluent in it and they're my clients, we can talk about it, and it's helpful. But
as a teaching piece?
we don't have it. We have some models that we teach, and structural, systemic, strategic, Milan, paradoxical, narrative, so it goes. And everybody's the convert to the new thing, except I'm not. I try to make it all. I try to make it. So we have to send it out because there's another something in the schedule. Yeah. So I had hoped this would just be an immersive experience because I knew there was no way we could tie in all the little pieces, but it would at least allow you to get in the canoe and surf with me.